Get in the know. Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
And actually, it's time for Purple Access. Judd, Chip, Scoggin, Star Tribune sports columnist, and Declan Goff, of course. Chipper, you just said off mic what I was starting to write about for, by the way, my friends at Vikings Wire, which is when you look at the advanced stats, the simplest stats, and you crunch them, the Vikings 10-2 record flies in the face of logic, which is why the national folks are not jumping on board, and I think the word fraud has been thrown out. So as a person who watches this game, these games like I do every week, can you offer more insight and explanation, because the eye test does apply here to a certain degree for sure?
No, I have no logic. I have no insight. And I'm not big into the deep dive analytics numbers. I was just looking at, just out of curiosity before we came on here, scoring average, which, basic, how many points you score a game. They're averaging fewer points a game than last year when Zimmer was the coach. Last year, when we killed their offense, their scoring average was 25.0.
Yep.
Right now, and that was 14th in the NFL. Right now, they're sitting outside the top 10. They're 11th at 24.1. So I don't know, Judd. I mean, I've been saying this for weeks. I know Kirk Cousins is on pace to have maybe his worst statistical season as a starter.
Yes.
I don't care. I don't care about stats. I mean, he's making winning plays. Now, last week last week it was atypical how wild he was and how off the mark he was. I mean, he's normally, that's, kind of his calling card is his accuracy, and he can put the ball, on the money. He was high, wide. He talked about being sped up by the pass rush of the Jets. But then in the moment of truth, when it got to be 20-15 and they had to have a score, he goes 5 for 5 for 62 yards and throws that, that great pass to Jefferson for the touchdown. So they're weird. That's all I can say. They're a weird team. How's that for analysis? They're a weird team.
They are a weird team. Yes, but they are a weird team. But the thing about them that's, and it's basically an apples to apples comparison from last year is they are a team now that makes the big plays at the right time. A year ago, they almost never did. Short of that play that I think Harrison Smith made at the end of the Pittsburgh game, which preserved that game, which was a big play. But, last year they didn't get and or make the plays at crunch time. And this year, 9 consecutive one-score wins, they do. And that's the weird thing about football is if you can make those plays, like look at that. That's why it frustrated me last year when we constantly heard, well, the Vikings record, if they won their one-score game, okay, but they didn't.
You didn't, yeah.
So, that's the difference to me, and I'm not going to discredit them for making plays at winning time.
That's why, it's kind of become this running narrative. Are they lucky, or are they – well, I don't know. Luck doesn't make good plays. Luck doesn't make
correct
game-turning plays, an interception, a catch, a touchdown, a run, a sack, or whatever. That's not luck. And I know the one-score games, the theory is, hey, those, tend to be 50-50. Some years they go your way, some years they don't, and that's why people think that this team's not championship caliber. And I understand that because, they have gotten blown out twice by good teams. But I think it's a discredit, and it's not right to just say, they're lucky. They're getting lucky in these games. No, they're not getting lucky. I mean, they're making key plays, and we've heard them talk about the situational masters a lot. And I don't know how much that plays into it versus just that they got some pretty good playmakers that when they need to make a play, will go do it.
Well, yeah. And, if you just go back to the Jets game on Sunday, Chipper, if you look at third downs and the difference there, the stark contrast there, the red zone. And yes, I mean, this is a situational sport. Like, it's great to move between the 20s, but, and we saw this a long time ago with the Childress teams. The teams that could move between the 20s and then not score aren't going to win nearly as much as the teams that punch it in.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, to the defense's credit, I mean, it does feel like they're hanging by a thread sometimes, but if you can hold teams to field goals and not touchdowns, and they were really good in the red zone, really good on third down, it's probably not the ideal way you want to do it. You want to have a rock solid defense for 100 yards, but it doesn't. I mean, this defense is not that. And I'll look it up here real quick while we're talking. I would be curious to know. Let's see, pass defense. They are still 32nd. Yeah. Still 32nd. So when's the last 10-win team that was dead last in pass defense? 10-2 team. It's unbelievable.
Might not be one.
That doesn't make sense either, right?
No.
I mean, if you told me this team has the worst pass defense in the NFL, I would say they probably have a losing record.
Yeah. I mean, it would be, well, or if you said, I'm not going to tell you what it is. They have a winning record, but the worst pass defense in the league. I would say, okay, they're putting up a ton of points.
They're top scoring offense. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. They're offsetting that by scoring a ton of points. Yeah, I mean, this is a weird team, but you don't win 9 consecutive one-score games by luck. You might win 1 or 2 by luck, by good fortune, but at some point in time, you have to embrace your identity no matter what that identity is. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And it is interesting. Like last year, they could not make that play consistently. Now, we saw it a couple times in close games, but consistently. Mm-hmm. And you see it, the teams that are playing that just either shoot themselves in the foot, have turnovers, whatever. When the game's there for the taking. I think about I go back to the Cardinals game. The passes that Kyler Murray was making, just throw one up for grabs, and for an interception. I mean, that's where I think the Vikings are showing some toughness in that when they get in these games, they know, okay, we got to make a play here, right? We got to, one side of the ball or other, or even special teams, got to make a play. And that's where I think this team has a toughness about it. Like, because I think it is when you get in those situations where, 2-minute or, the momentum's going against you and you got to stop it and make a play like we saw Sunday against the Jets where they had to have that drive. I mean, it's 20-15 now. The Jets felt like they're just going to keep kicking field goals, but it got to 20-15. The offense couldn't do anything. Cousins was wild as can be throwing the ball. And then he just starts putting passes on the money. The offense got aggressive, throwing the ball down the field. And there you go. They, as O'Connell said, they don't win without that touchdown. So to me, that was a sign of toughness.
Yes. Well, and you know what? The last drive that the Jets had, the Bynum pick. I mean, that's a huge play. That's a huge play at the right time. I'm not trying to defend how they're winning. I just think it's too simplistic to just discredit them. And they've won 10 games. If they had 7 or 8 wins, I'd be like, okay, that's not that great. But they have the second. I mean, the amazing thing is, and why I think this takes more thorough discussion is they have the second most victories in the National Football League to Philadelphia.
Yeah, they have the second most wins. They're 10-2, and it seems like by the week we're picking them apart. It's like, what is going on?
Right, because it doesn't make because you're right. The statistics don't back up the record.
Yeah, and
you're right.
I hope people are enjoying the season at least, and not like. This team's flawed. They're lucky. They're this or that. It's like they're 10-2. Enjoy this. I mean, how often do you get a 10-2 season? And I think they are. I mean, you can tell by the the stadium. The stadium has been rocking for these games, and it's been loud. I think they're into it, and I'm just curious when they get in the playoffs, what that's going to look like because you're going to face good teams, and can this formula take you on a run in the playoffs? I think that's the question. We'll ask it obviously when they get there and you get to the playoff time. But can this formula? Can you win in the playoffs with a defense that gives up that many passing yards and an offense that really is just not consistently clicking?
I've started to give this great thought though. So forget when they get here. I want to talk about this right now.
The buck stops here.
I've started to give this thought because but it's a very. Considering the Eagles lost in week 2 and then the Dallas debacle, it's a very fair question because you're going to face good teams. You're right. And more importantly, you're likely going to face good quarterbacks. Mike White like you had the right formula to stop Mike White and the Jets. But if that is, a different quarterback, it might be a different story. But so here's what I think defensively, especially though. I think you have to take the playoffs as sort of a separate thing for sure from the regular season, Chip. And I think what you would need is, I don't think this formula would work to win playoff games. But I guess my question is this: can you adjust and tweak it enough against your opponent to stop them? For instance, if you play San Fran, right? What Pollard did for Dallas, McCaffrey and Debo are going to do to you, and that's 2 guys. You got to have a plan for that one game, because nothing's more important than that one game at the moment to stop them. And I don't know if that's more Asamoah. I don't know if that's a complete shift in some philosophy. But if Ed Donatel comes out in Ed Donashell fashion against San Fran or a Dallas, you're going to lose. So the question is, can you treat that one game as a very special game and rig things up, if that makes sense, for that game?
Yeah, I mean, because when you're talking about one game, it's about matchups and exploiting those matchups and having the game plan to, try to take away what they do best. And you do that in the regular season, obviously, but with that, that one game, it's just that focus. That's all you're worried about. That will be the question, is like, can this defense, figure out how to take something away from an offense, right? Can you take away, because right now, what are they taking away? Right. They're really good in the red zone, like they were Sunday. They're creating turnovers. I mean, obviously, that's going to give you a chance to win. I mean, they've done a good job with that. And vice versa, the offense is like, can they, maximize Jefferson? Can they figure out a way to get Dalvin going? Can you, because you're right. I don't know that this template that they have right now is going to take them a long way through the playoffs. But with one game, Jefferson goes nuts. You never know. Your defense creates turnovers. That's why it's so fascinating that, and I think that's still the hesitancy for probably the national folks to really buy into what this team is, because it's like so much of it is just looking at the stats, looking at how's this team 10-2. What I mean, their stats don't show that they should be a 10-2 team. And then when you win close games, I think the natural assumption is, hey, they got the ball bounced their way this way or that way. There's a little bit of luck involved there, which I think that's a little bit too easy of an explanation.
2 things that are going to have to change for a playoff game. And it's going to be on the coaching side both ways. O'Connell's going to have to tweak his play calling. On 3rd and 2, on 2nd and 2, you can't throw 2 consecutive passes. You've got to get the first down, because I think the most important thing here to me, Chip, offensively, not just points, it's possession time. The 3 and outs have to stop. You can't be putting your defense on the field as much as they did on Sunday against the Jets and expect to win. The time of possession in the second half and the 3 and outs, I think especially in the third quarter, were a real problem. You got to have the ball more. You got to keep it, and I think that's running more. As crazy as that sounds, they
got to be more effective doing it. Yeah, I mean, but you're right. Cousins talked about that. I mean, it's one thing he brought up in the postgame. He's like, we were staying on the sideline too much. We didn't have the ball to sustain. And if you have a defense that's, kind of leaking oil against the pass, you don't want to go back to the Zimmer ball control, keep them on the sideline. I mean, you still got to be aggressive, still kind of foot on the gas with your offense. But you're right. They need to pick up more first downs. So they got to get that running game going to help that out.
The other thing that I think you have to start to toy with right now is this. You've got to take some of the balls that are going to Thielen and throw them to Reagor and see what happens, because Chip, Thielen can't run. He can't, there's no yak there. I think he now goes backwards to try and get some a head of steam, because he circles back now and often goes backwards from the catch. I think he just can't push off.
I would love to know the extent of that, what he's playing through with that foot, that ankle. I mean,
it's bad. It's obviously bad.
Yeah, I mean, you see him walking, it looked like he's limping. When he walks into there was a video, what was it, the Thanksgiving night game where they showed him walking into the stadium? It's like, man, he's limping before the game,
Yep.
It's interesting. I mean, you saw the catch that Reagor made, and I mean, obviously he's fast. And O'Connell talked about it a little bit on defense last week. He's like, we want to see Asamoah more. And I wonder if as this season's going on, these guys are kind of accumulating bumps and sprains and those type of things. If they aren't going to get more guys involved, I would be curious to see if they could get Reagor 3 more touches, 3 more touches, just to see, what he can do. And maybe they will now. Maybe they say, you know what, it's time to kind of give him more a bigger role in the offense. So I'm curious to see if that does going forward. And but Thielen is still so valuable in terms of drawing attention, red zone. I mean,
red zone, he's fantastic.
I know he's not, he's not clearly 100%, but I think O'Connell just trusts him so much with everything.
And if I can get him to run routes where he is right where he needs to be when he catches the ball, that's great.
Yeah.
My point is open field, like on just a 5-yard gain. Now in the red zone, totally different story. But I think throwing him the ball and then having to say run is an impossibility. Reagor intrigues me. Osborne is not nearly what I thought he was going to be, but I'm just saying as far as potential, to your point, explosive plays, Reagor gives you a chance, especially between the 20s, to have explosive plays.
Yeah, because of his speed and I mean that vertical threat. But they need more plays. That's the one thing. They just got to have more plays. I mean,
yes,
we talked about you got to spread it more here, give this guy more here, but they needed more first downs to be able to get more plays. They just didn't have enough plays because of the 3 and outs last week.
Definitely
in the second half. Yeah.
On defense, if you play a team that's got a threat like Pollard, I think what you need to do for that game in particular is you need to, if you don't trust Asamoah to replace Hicks, you need to seriously consider a rarely used package that I've seen, which is 3 safeties, and get a linebacker off the field, basically go old school dime, but it's a big dime because it's safeties. But I would rather have, if you think Josh Metellus is your best option, I would play him above Hicks if I know I'm going to get dinked and dunked on in the passing game.
Yeah, and that was the other O'Connell mentioned Metellus too, and I think he got 3-4 snaps maybe.
Asamoah got 4. I think he got 2. I think he got 2.
Yeah, I know. So not a huge sample, obviously, but the fact that O'Connell talked about it last week before the game, saying he wants to see more of them, and then even if it's only a couple snaps that got on there. So maybe that's the way they're trending, because they got to make some adjustments here in terms of personnel or scheme or something, because when you're giving up that kind of yards to the Jets offense, and I know Garrett Wilson's a really fast, talented receiver, but the explosive plays that they're giving up in the passing game is they've got to figure out something, because that's, you get in the playoff game and you have a couple of those, that could be the end of your season.
Absolutely. I think Dantzler potentially coming back on Sunday.
Sunday, yeah, that'll help. Huge. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm guessing, Evans, we're not going to see for a while.
Yeah.
If that's, the O'Connell say he's had 3 this year and 2 in not back-to-back weeks, but 2 in 3 weeks.
Yep.
I'm guessing we're not going to see him for a while. So getting Dantzler back will be huge for that secondary.
And I don't know when he's going to come back exactly, but Darisaw coming back is huge too, because
the
kid Brandel did a nice job, but I mean, we're talking about an all-pro left tackle and Darisaw.
Yeah, and that Jets defense was physical, Judd. I mean, they came to hit.
They were fun, weren't they?
Boy, it was. It felt old school there for the first half of the hits they were putting on Jefferson, and Cousins took some. And I give Vikings credit. They stood up to it. I mean, Jefferson bounced right up and did his first down sign, and they were not going to be intimidated by the physical nature that the Jets brought. But I knew the Jets were good because they were 4th in points or whatever, and I hadn't seen them a lot defensively, but you can see why they're highly ranked defensively. They are physical. That is probably the most physical game I think I've seen that offense have to go against. It's
fun to watch too, because I mean they probably take a little bit of excess in penalties because the officials are watching for it. But that secondary lays you.
The corners are good,
old school,
and their corners are physical. They want to get their hands on you and beat you up too. So they're good. I mean, I think they take their reflection of their head coach. So again, that's it wasn't. You go out to that big. They get out to the big league, and the second half was just kind of a, couldn't get anything generated offensively, defensively, giving up big plays, but that was a good team. That was a good team that I know they had, you don't want to see them have to win it that way. Everybody wants to see them run away with games, but I just don't know that this team is built that way because of their defense and the way their offense is kind of not struggling, but just not consistent right now.
Yeah, and I think odds are strong that in the playoffs, I mean, you're probably not going to beat teams badly, right? Like you're going to win.
Unless something fluky happens.
You hopefully look better than the Vikings defense did at times on Sunday, but I don't think that you're going to win games by 10 points there. So like this is, you could argue, pretty good practice for what the playoffs are going to be like. You just need to play more sound football.
And this is, how much do you think, I mean, it's kind of a loaded question, Irish question, but having been through these situations a lot, 9 times against good teams, not all good teams, but that was a good team, will pay dividends once they get in the playoffs. And they've been in these games. They're not going to panic if they're behind, or not going to, if it's a close game, they're not going to panic. They know they can win. I think it's going to pay dividends when they get in the playoffs.
And what's weird about it too is for as much as they drive the fan base crazy, they as a team don't panic. Like, when's the last time that you looked and again a lead was going away, right? They're blowing the lead and you looked at the sideline and it's, oh my God, chaos, because we've seen that before.
Oh yeah.
I don't see that from this team. I see sort of a calmness and they're collected.
More so than panic, you don't see slumped shoulders.
Yep.
And I think that's more what you see, like, and it's more like, this is not our day. And it's just, nothing's working. And that's when I talked about the toughness, that's what I mean. Like, it would have been easy for the offense, for Cousins to get really frustrated with that second half and even the first half, the way he was throwing the ball. I mean, he started 0-5 and he was missing guys, and but they stayed with it. And to me, that shows toughness when you don't have your best day by a stretch. I mean, his accuracy was just all over point, but when you need it, you can summon it and really lock in and have a drive that's important. To me, that's a sign of toughness that I think this team has in these games, in these situations where, a player here or there can decide whether you win or lose, and they're finding ways to make it.
And Kirk is tough. I mean, that's the one thing. He took a beating on Sunday. He took some hellacious hits. He got right back up. I mean, he introduced the contact with C.J. Mosley, which I thought was half crazy, but he got right back up from that too.
Yeah, it's interesting. He said that the Jets pass rush sped him up, and I haven't heard him say that before. He's like, some of his accuracy problems had to do with the pass rush, and even if he wasn't getting hit, he got all out of whack kind of timing wise. He said he was throwing it before it was set and before the route had developed, and he was needing to like slow himself down a little bit. So it's interesting to hear him kind of say that and explain, like, he said that, the TJ Hawkinson one was just a bad throw. He just missed it. I think that's the one he was really.
The Jefferson missing. One that Justin dropped was behind him too. That was not a great
Jefferson. Throw. That was not a great throw. Yeah, Jefferson said that will haunt him because, I mean, it was back here, but I mean, heck, if it's, anywhere near Jefferson, you sort of expect him to catch it. But yeah, it was weird. Like, his timing from the very get-go, like, there was just some throws. You're like, wow, what was that? You just don't see that from Cousins. And I asked O'Connell about it, and he's like, you know what? Some days they're just like that. Some days you just you're off the mark, which is, kind of refreshing to hear a coach say that. It's like, he's normally accurate. That day he was not. And so they still found a way to win.
Great stuff, Chipper. Talk to you next week.
All right, brother.
Thanks.